Welcome inside another edition of the pregame presented by Twitch. Week 2 edition. Vince Sapienza here from Raiders HQ alongside the former NFL vet, the former Raiders running back, current philanthropist, and analyst, an actor, a man who does it all. He is Rashad Jennings, and like the Raiders in Week 1, a cross-country traveler. How are we doing after the dub, and where are we now?
I'm good, man. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I got my family cross country, drove from California to Virginia, safe and sound. Got the chance to see middle of America again. And it's nothing like arriving across country and seeing the Raiders get a victory on the road week 1. Big game.
And as we look ahead to Week 2, we have to look back at Week 1. And I have to pat you on the back because when we were talking about our keys to victory for Week 1 on the road, you were talking about that 15-play scripted offense, getting the plays just right. And it couldn't have gone any more picture perfect for Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator, Geno Smith at quarterback, showing an array of weaponry on that opening drive. 6 plays, 71 yards, ending in a Trey Tucker touchdown. They really showed a microcosm of what they can do on offense from the get-go.
Yeah, and they have a lot of weapons on that side of the ball and offense. And, you got a pounder. You have a special tight end like you do in Brock Bowers. Obviously, receiving core is efficient, led out there by Jacoby. I think they can do everything across the board, and the leadership and a veteran that you could count on at the quarterback position is something that Pete Carroll knew what he was getting. Now I think Raider Nation and the rest of the league knows Geno Smith still has it.
I know it's still early, Rashad, but can you take me back to your experience, coming off of what would be a big road game for your team and what that does for the following week as you're preparing for another opponent? It's a week-by-week league. We understand that. You all start over again the next weekend. But what does a win like this do for this Raiders team, especially this early on in the season?
It sets the tempo. When you're on the road, you get a victory. It's always hard. It's very difficult to travel, especially across country like that, and against a good established team, or somebody who's young, up and coming like the Patriots. And then to be able to come home and fight in the division for a game that's going to count twice against an opponent that is also 1-0. And this potentially right here sets the tempo for who's going to be leading the division immediately. So it's a lot of energy. There's a lot of enthusiastic. There's a lot of potential implications of what could be for the future in the playoffs in this game. And so I think being back on the West Coast and taking this game on is going to mean a lot to Vegas. And everybody's going to be well prepared. Expect this game more than any other game that you saw all week 1 to be a very, very heavy-handed physical game.
Okay, so before we get into the keys of the game for this Monday night matchup between the Raiders and Chargers, I think it's a valid question, and it's something that's been talked about amongst media members, fans during this past week. Is this the biggest game for the Raiders inside Allegiant Stadium in its young history? There's an argument. There was a playoff implications a few years ago, so that obviously sits on itself, but this feels like one of the bigger games Allegiant Stadium will host. Primetime, all the eyes of the football world on you against a division rival with all the history that is between these two teams. How do you keep yourself in check yet understand the magnitude of what is coming?
You don't. There's no way that you can stay in check to the point where your blood isn't boiling just a little bit more than normal. That's expected. That's what should happen to a professional athlete. That's what should happen to a competitor. As a head coach, you try to bottle that up to allow them to build up to the peak, to let it go when the game is time to be played. But no, this is it. I mean, this is what we fight for. This is what we work for, to be in these positions. Primetime football, all the names, under the lights, the expectations, both teams, the division, it's all right there for us. And so, folks, they are going to play on the edge. Mm-hmm. Expect some excessive penalties from time to time, but no, you can't bottle them all in and expect them to go perform well. You have to get the bull upset before he goes out there. That's what makes the fun in trying to contain him. So yeah, expect the same here.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the keys to the game. Obviously, we talked about Geno Smith, first Raiders quarterback since 1991 to have 9 completions of over 20 yards in a game. First time in a long time for the Raiders, but also not the first time Geno has done something like that. It's the 23rd game since 2022 that Geno Smith has had a completion percentage of over 70%. That is the most in that span in the NFL. We've talked about Geno. But in terms of the focus, it all kind of shifts over to that other guy on the other side of the field, Justin Herbert, and what he was able to do. An equally impressive performance in Week 1 against the AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. When you look at shutting down the Chargers, does it start with Justin Herbert or is it somewhere else?
It's a tough deal. I'd say the Chargers are a very efficient team. They don't have any holes. This is going to be a pound-for-pound fight. I think Justin Herbert, obviously, you want to stop. You have to be able to make them one-dimensional, and that is slowing down the running game. They have good offensive line, heavy-handed. They can open up holes. They got 2 physical, burling running backs that can get busy. So I think you stop the run and you close the windows. I think we find ourselves in a lot more one-on-one matchups than usual because Justin can pick you apart. That's a reason why he is now competing to have. I think he holds the all-time record for the youngest, most passes in all-time history. I know last year he was the quickest to 10,000, and he's the quickest to do everything at the quarterback position. So to set back and just give him holes to deke and dunk you is not the answer. I think you got to blitz. I think you got to get in their face. I think you got to make it a backyard football game, which is why I expect this to be one of the most physical games that you see probably all year.
So what is the confidence level in the Raiders' defensive line to that point of putting pressure on him and making him uncomfortable? We saw the Raiders rack up 4 sacks and 4 different players getting a sack in Week 1. How important will be that defensive line starting on time and getting to him early?
Yeah, early and often. That's the phrase. Hit them early, hit them often. Every time you get near that quarterback, you want to brush up against him. Even if you're not getting a big hit, at least bump into him a little bit. Let them know you're there, the presence, because that sets up the timing can be off with a passer and a catcher just because of a pure presence. So the defensive line got a lot of work to do. And I also think the secondary has a lot of work to do. And shout out to the Raiders secondary because it's not every single day that you look at a stat sheet and you come to find out that the tacklers who has the most tacklers are appropriate. You don't always want your safeties leading the board. You want your linebackers leading the board, which Devin White had 11. You want your corners leading the board because it's catch and tackle immediately, or if you're on the perimeter, which is Kelly had 9 as well. Pratt, a linebacker. So it's like it's spread out on who's making the tackles. Everybody was flying to the ball, and that's something that Pete Carroll pointed out on his press conference that he was most impressed by, as well as I was as a viewer, a fan, and somebody who played the game. Everybody swarmed to the football, and we talked about this preseason. You've been with us the whole time. Preseason, they weren't tackling well, and we said that was going to be a point of emphasis, and we've seen it be a point of emphasis in how they've been playing through the rest of that preseason and especially Week 1 on the road.
Thank goodness we can throw that topic out the window. Get that out the window. The tackling is taken care of. That is, check that box. We are good to go on that. And Kyu Blue Kelly, we were talking about the secondary all preseason, as you mentioned, leading into Week 1. And Kyu Blue Kelly, Vegas's own, 100% of the snaps. One of only 6 players on defense play 100% of the snaps. So good on the local product. But let's switch to the other side of the ball now and the offense. For as much good as Geno did, I think maybe one of the surprise takeaways, let's call it, from Week 1 was the lack of a running game and the lack of the ability to kind of break out in a big way like the Raiders definitely want to with Ashton Jeanty. Kind of a wild statistic here, Rashad, and I want to see how this one sits on you. Ashton Jeanty had 44 yards rushing after contact, yet he only finished the game with 38. What does that tell you, and what do the Raiders need to do to up those numbers?
Listen, that's if you hear that, you'll have to say that again, because it kind of doesn't compute. when a running back is getting, first of all, yards after contact is a big deal to a running back. That's one of the things I've always prided myself on: yards after contact and protecting the quarterback. I was top 4 every single year I played as a starter, and YAC as well. I was in the top efficiencies. So that's a pure player stat, what you are able to do with the football in your hand. Now, what that says, I need some help. That's what it says. That's what it screams. If all my yards are coming yards after the contact, give me some holes. Give me some holes and see what I can do. And I think that's something that's going to be a big point of emphasis as well, is the angles. Obviously, this is the National Football League, folks. You're not going to be able to have gaping Grand Canyon holes all the time to run through. That's not what we're talking about. But there is little angled gaps to be able to slither through. And I think as time goes on, Ashton Jeanty is going to study and become more of a student of the NFL game and find those little gaps to sneak through more. I'm sure, just as any good running back, he will say there were some yards that were left out there. There were some holes that I missed. I've had the ball, how many times did he carry the ball? I think he carried over to 19 times. Right. Through those 19 times, I'm sure there was one hole that he wished he could go back and run through again, maybe 2, 3, 4. And that's what keeps the defense having to play sound. And when you have a defense that has to play sound, keeps them open in the pass game. It helps the offensive line with containing the blocks. So it all works together. But the run game, just like we said, the defensive tackling the open field is going to be a big point of emphasis. Watch it this week, as the run game will be a big point of emphasis.
Yeah, you talked about leaving yards on the table. There was one play in particular I know Ashton talked about. It was that 3rd and short. He bounced it to the outside. He lost his footing. It was one-on-one with a corner. And 9 times out of 10, you say you're going to give the advantage to Ashton Jeanty. That would have changed his statistical day, obviously, in a big way. It did not come to fruition. But when you're looking at the offensive line, and as a former running back, you can give better perspective than just about anybody on this angle as you're developing your game, right? You talk about the yards after run and after contact. But what is that conversation during the week? Is there conversation with the offensive line? Because there was obviously some opportunities. The offensive line missed a few assignments. The communication wasn't on point. So what does that cohesion look like in the buildup to the week and the stuff that we don't get to see every day?
Yeah, the things you don't get to see every day as a fan and consuming the game outside of the locker room is the conversations that are being had. So getting a sense of Ashton and the kind of kid he is, and, getting a sense of the leadership of Geno Smith and, Crosby, and those guys really want to own the team themselves. They don't want the owners just to be on the coaches to make the right calls and make the right everything. It's the players making the plays happen. I guarantee you they've had a conversation where in the offensive line and running backs where it's, hey, guys, look, it's going to be on us. And I need you to help me help you. What are you looking at? And that's the best thing. I'm going to say this, and I believe this wholeheartedly. It's never been done. I know for me as a coach, this is something I'm going to do because I plan to get in the coaching world, whether it's high school or at the collegiate level. It might help pros, but I will always have my running backs sit in the same meeting room with my offensive line. It does no good to have an offensive line in one room and running back in the other. My humble opinion, playing running back in the NFL for 8 years, folks. Why? It's because I need to know what my big boys are thinking. I need to see what they're seeing. I need to hear what they're being coached up to do so I can fill in the blanks. It's not, it coincides together. And I guarantee you that's going to start to happen more and more and more as the season progresses, as they do inside run drills. That's going to be a big point of emphasis, folks. That happens 2 days ago, which usually happens on Wednesdays. So we are going to see a different game happen in the run game this particular game. Always the biggest jump, and folks, in the NFL is week 1 to week 2, where the team shows the biggest difference, and then from week 2 to week 4. So here's week 2. We will see a different game, a different team coming out there with an attitude and a game plan.
You know, Pete Carroll talked about Ashton Genty saying, he was pretty jacked up for his first game. Like, he was pretty hyped up, and understandably so. Now, Ashton kind of downplayed. He's like, it's football. You're always jacked up. But Pete said, there's things he's going to learn from that tape from week one because maybe he was a little too hopped up. All the points you were making. Can you take us back to your first NFL game, your first couple carries, and the intensity and how jacked up were you? Do you even remember it? Did you have to look back at the tape to be like, oh, yeah.
I do remember, man. Folks, so I'm going to take you back to 2009. I was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maurice Jones-Drew was the starting running back, and we were running behind Greg Jones. That big fullback came out of Florida State with that powerful arm of his. But I want to say we were playing the Colts away, and so we were in that dome playing against Peyton Manning. It was third, and I remember being in the facility. I was only playing special teams at the time, but that's when I learned that sound waves actually vibrate you physically. It was so loud in there when we were on the offensive side of the ball, and it was 3rd down and 5, and the stadium erupted. And you had Freeney on the defensive end and Matthews on the defensive end. And they were screaming, we in shotgun. Nobody could hear anything. Only thing I looked at, I'm on the sideline. I looked at my teammate, and I'm like, he was another rookie too. And we both said, Taquan Underwood. And we both looking at each other like, trying to yell at each other. We can't hear each other. You can feel the vibration holding you still from how loud it is. I never forget that moment. So I can't imagine as a rookie, that was my rookie experience, being on the field while all of that's happening. And having a hold of football, make the moves. You think you're on national TV, you think about your aunts, cousins, everybody looking at you, don't want to mess up. Like, it's a lot going on, folks. Just being from the human element that takes place, but you settle in. And I think we're going to see this kid really settle in as a true starting running back. And the irony of that story is I'm talking to you about Maurice Jones-Drew, and I think Ashton Genty is a 2.0, maybe even plus or more of them. So.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our next key point ahead of week 2 in the Raiders and Chargers is the fact that it is the home opener. And I know we alluded to it at the top of the show about the excitement that this game brings and being the home opener in Allegiant Stadium. Is this one of the biggest games at Allegiant Stadium? I think so, not only because of the excitement that is surrounding the Raiders, but because it is a division game, because it is the home opener, because it is Carroll versus Harbaugh once again, a 3rd edition. It is the storied rivalry between these two franchises. And when you talk about the expectation of, Raider Nation's going to show up, right, in a big way Monday night, the eyes of the football world, as I said, on you, what is the key? You said you can't keep your emotions in check that day. How did you do it? How did you manage it properly? I imagine it took a few years to kind of perfect how you do it, but I would imagine the butterflies are always there no matter what.
No matter what, man. And I tell you, the biggest way, as me, if I'm the coach, I want to settle the jitters of those who have the least experience. I want to settle the jitters of those who have the least experience. It's just good, healthy advice in life, right? And I want my young running back to be more poised than anybody. So my first play, and let's see what happens. But my first play that I would give my running back is a good old-fashioned downhill run. Why? Because I want him to hit the line of scrimmage, be very physical, and that it gets him out of the mind of where he's at. And it puts him into the physicality of where he's at. Because if you are pass protecting on the first one or running a route, it's like, I still haven't hit anybody yet. I still ain't here. I ain't settled in. That first contact as a runner, it settles you back in. And if I'm Geno Smith after the first run, no matter if it's first down, 3 yards, 1 yard, I'm hitting my young running back on the helmet and say, hey, now let's lock in. Because we got to get them in, juiced up, ready to go. It's Monday Night Football, folks. It's something you talked about, heard about, been dreaming about being in. It does come with some jitters, as it should. There's a human element. But being at home, Raider Nation, I also would try to start off on defense too. But that's just me. But
and why is that? Explain why that is. Explain why you'd want to start on defense.
Because I know immediately, as soon as you kick the ball off, the game starts. Everybody's loud, excited, and that energy. You still got some people sipping on some cans of goods. They keep them elevated. They're gonna be screaming and hollering. I want my defense riled up, energy, efficient, flying. I want the crowd still in it, packed up, ready to get a quick 3 and out. If you go quick 3 and out at home with that crowd, oh my goodness, it sets a different tempo and you get the ball second half.
You know, I've always said that the build up and lead up to a big game, the onus is on the fans, especially for the home team. It is on the fans. In this particular situation, it's on Raider Nation, right, leading up to the game. But once that ball gets kicked off, it's on the players, right? It is solely on the players to keep them in the game. So obviously there's ebbs and flows throughout the game, but how much, as a player, your focus is on the game. I understand that. But how much was it in the back of your mind like, hey, we need to get this crowd back in it during some of those lulls and the ebbs and flows?
It matters. You do want your crowd in the game because they're literally the 12th man on the field that kind of annoys the opponent. It gets you going. It kind of even – I tell you, the first time we played in London, this is when it came to fruition of really beyond the idea and emotion of a fan of like how much they matter. When we was in London and it was 4th and 1 and we went for it. This is when I was playing with the Giants. We got a first down and nobody clapped or booed. It was just so awkward that you don't realize how much that at a particular time you expect or elevates you. And we were getting booed at kickoff. Like, we kicked the ball off. Usually you hear, like, and go down and make the play. Nah, we were hearing boo. It was like, what the heck are we in? Like, I don't understand it. It's hard to focus when the elements aren't playing right. And so being at home, I'm telling you, folks, fans at home, when you go, you cheer your team on, we really depend on y'all subconsciously more than we even know as an athlete. So, yes, that 12th man matters, and it's nothing like Raider Nation.
All right, Rashad, a couple more points before we say goodbye. Brock Bowers, Landon Roberts both leave the game in week 1. Status for week 2, unclear. Sounds like it's going to be a game day type situation for both players. Obviously, Brock is 1 of 1, right? And when you look at Landon Roberts, he is the green dot guy on that defense. He is the ultimate communicator, the tone setter, the thumper, all of that. For goodness sakes, he was giving a pep talk to his defense and his fellow linebackers as he's walking off the field injured in week 1. I've never seen that before, by the way. I don't know if you have. I'll get your 2 cents on that. But the confidence level in those position groups, if the worst case scenario were to be, if Brock and Landon weren't able to go, what that means for that matchup on Monday night.
It sets, those are 2 leaders, two guys that the team depends on. I think when you look at Brock and you look at the offense, I mean, they got several good tight ends on that team. And I think that Geno Smith and I think that Pete Carroll, the way how they work together is a very heavy tight end structure. And his presence will be felt or missed whether he plays or not. I think even having a Brock Bowers out on the field, whether he's not 100%, just kind of been running a few stick routes, right? Just his presence requires so much attention that it will be felt. But again, that's why amongst many, even if he plays, we know he's not playing at 100%. That run game is going to be everything. And I think we do have some matchups which play in our favor. I think we got a few speedsters that play in our favor for some deep balls, and Geno is special with putting that ball in a position where only his receiver or nobody can get it. So again, folks, if you see a ball slightly overthrown or, don't be disappointed. That was a smart quarterback putting it into place where only his receiver can get it. But no, getting to the answer, I think those 2 will be missed, but not to the point where Raiders can't go in there and get the job done.
Have you ever seen a player get injured, walk off the field, clearly in pain, yet pulls his guys aside during the TV timeout and gives them a pep talk. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I haven't. I've seen some things close, but never like that, man. I tell you, and it's brilliant because it's almost like we owe you one. Like, hey, if he's injured, coming over here and got this much energy, like I feel like I got to go win for him. And so it matters, man. These emotional leaders, folks at home, I know, football can be looked at as just a sport alone, but there's an emotional element to this game that cannot be repeated or even produced outside of something real. And some of these relationships that these guys have with players in the locker room and even the coaches are undeniably one of the biggest reasons why teams are willing to go that extra mile beyond what just the paycheck is telling them to play for. And those kind of guys are on the Raiders team. And so vet leadership, young guys that can go is a perfect mix under Pete Carroll and everything that's going on. There's a lot to be excited about Raider Nation right now.
Rashad, love the stories, love the look backs and how it relates to today's game because it all matters, right? It is the epitome of a team sport, and you are a fantastic teammate. Thank you so much, Raider Nation, for watching us here on the pregame presented by Twitch. You can catch all our episodes up on Raiders.com, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For Rashad Jennings, I'm Vince Sapienza. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the game on Monday night.